Okay guys, we're back for video number 3 in our Artfully Composed stamp class for April. We have a fun fold card to make that I think you guys are going to love. So I know it'll take a minute for notifications to go out and for you guys to join. This morning has flown right by. Good morning, Kelly. Glad to have you with us this morning. Thanks for joining. And I see Jan is back. Wait just a minute. And of course, if you're watching the replay, so glad you're here as well. And I know it's a busy weekend, busy holiday weekend, so I hope that those that are with family and friends this weekend have a wonderful Easter weekend. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our project. As I said earlier, this is a fun fold card, but I don't know what the name of this card is. I saw a demonstrator named Jamie, and unfortunately that's all I know is her name is Jamie. I saw her make this card, something similar to this fold, and I thought this would be perfect with the paper and everything that we're using for our class. Okay, well, let's get started. I will show you how awesome this card is. I love it, and it would be a great one if you were sending a card from a group of people, because there's lots of real estate to it. There's lots of options with this card as well as far as embellishing it and really decorating it, but I think this is so cool. It opens like this. So you're able to share a couple of different pieces of designer series paper, and like I said, lots of real estate to write if you were sending a card from a group of people. I know at work a lot of times several people need to sign the card, so this would be a great one. But isn't this a fun fold? I'd never seen it before. So if you're going to be creating along with me, you're going to need a couple of things. Of course, your packet for this card and the supplies inside. Go ahead and pull out your card base. This is basic white cardstock. Most of the time when I use white cardstock for the base of a card, it's the thick basic white. But this card has a lot of substance to it with the different layers, so I'm only using the regular basic white cardstock for this card. It's 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. So you want to go ahead and burnish your score line. And get your trimmer. The other thing you're going to need is a pencil, or I can give you a couple different ways to mark the card because you're going to be cutting the front yourself. Now don't stress about that because there's lots of different options for that. You don't have to do it exactly like I do, and it'll still work just fine. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and stamp my sentiment. Let me pull my card out so you can see. Whoops, I just dropped it on the floor. Move my card. Okay. So I stamped my sentiment over to this side on the bottom, and then we're going to cut that piece away. Hopefully you can see this is where we're using that awesome edge, that border die. It's really, really pretty. So let's come in with our Evening Evergreen ink. And I think I may have lost my pencil too. There it is. And on the front of the card, make sure you've got your front. We'll go ahead and do our stamping. Beautiful, thank you, Sentiment. That looks so nice with Evening Evergreen ink. Okay, now go ahead and grab your pencil and your trimmer, and with your card front, bring it over to 1 inch on the right hand side of your blade, and where your track is, you can go ahead and mark 1 inch, just a little pencil mark there, and you're going to be able to erase it when you're done. Now turn that over to where you've got the top, and again bring it over to 1 inch and mark it again. So let me show you that one more time. You've got the front of your card. That's one of the reasons why I like stamping it first. It helps give me some orientation of the card. I'm going to put it in at 1 inch, and right where the cutting track is, put a notch with my pencil. Then turn it over where it's upside down. Bring it back in at 1 inch, and another little notch with my pencil. Okay, so of course you can use a ruler if you would like to. You can use your scoring tool. That's what I did the first card that I made, but I ended up putting a little bit too much of a mark. I was able to get most of that out with my bone folder, but just whatever you want to do to mark that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the cutting. So you're just going to take those 2 pencil marks and line them up in your cutting track. Okay, let me bring that closer so you can see. You've got that mark at the top, you've got the mark at the bottom, right in that cutting track, so that when I close the arm and I cut that piece off, it's going to leave that angle. Now it does not have to be perfect. Just save that for something else. You can always use that piece for some stamping of an image or sentiment on another project. Now, if you have some pencil mark left, which that cut off, but this up here, have just a little bit of a pencil mark, so I'll erase that. The other thing you could do is do that on the inside if you wanted to. Now it looks like I'm going to need to burnish again. Jen, let me know how you're doing. I know you're a wizard with math, so I imagine you've already got yours cut. Burnish that really good. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in this little strip. And this is about 6 1/4, 6.5 inches long. I did that on purpose because it depends on how you cut how much of a strip you're going to need. So you don't want to cut that exactly at the card length. You want to make sure that you've got a little bit of extra. And we're just going to actually line this up. I'll put a little bit, so you're going to have some that hangs over at each end, and that is by design so that you had plenty since you were doing your own cutting. And I'm just going to put on the inside a small bead of glue so that I can attach that. And again, you can use the adhesive of choice, but I like using liquid glue so that I've got a little bit of time and wiggle room, because I need that to get everything where I want it. Then I'll just add that border, get everything lined up so that I see that pretty stitching. Give it a little back rub, as my friend Judy says. And I just thought that was such a pretty touch to add to this card. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a second. You're slow today, Jan. Me too. I did not sleep well last night, and when I woke up, oh, but I'm doing pretty good now because I've had some coffee. Might need more coffee, Jan. So once I make sure that that's good and dry, I can come in with my paper snips and just trim off, just straight off that end. And it's not much. Again, just straight off. Okay, let me get those little pieces out of the way. So that alone is really fun. I love that effect on the card front. And you may want to keep burnishing that fold. It's got a lot of layers to it, so you really want to make sure that that's laying down well. Okay, the next thing we have is a piece of evening evergreen cardstock. Let me measure it right quick because it's been a minute. I know it's 8 inches wide. It's been a minute since I prepped all of this. Yeah, 8 inches by 5 1/4. And then it's scored at 4.